Good evening and welcome to The Square. Tonight's discussion is the second part of a series that we're going to discuss. We last discussed it on our platform in October last year. This is the Penal Code. Specifically, we are going to look at a particular petition on this code, which is to decriminalize adultery, the law on adultery and concubinage. And this is something that we discussed last year, like I said. There have been a few changes to this particular petition. It was first raised last year by lawyer Richard Mugisha. And this year, there are other organizations that have joined in this petition. And these are the Rwanda Journalists Association, the University of Rwanda's School of Law, as well as Profam Twese Hamwe. So tonight we are joined in this debate by opposing sides. We're going to hear from people who want to have the law on adultery as an offense actually pulled from the Penal Code, and there are others who want this particular part of the Penal Code, the law on adultery and concubinage, to remain. So with us we have from Profam Twese Hamwe. Thank you very much for joining us. Aline Murekatete, who is a project manager at Profam Twese Hamwe. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We also have with us Advocate Stephen Salim Gatari. Thank you for joining us.
You too.
My name is Dan Ampisi. I am the host of The Square. I am joined by Berna Namata. Always a pleasure having you, Berna. Unfortunately, the gentlemen who represent The Square as well, Ephraim Wamwende and Charles Hub, are not with us due to unavoidable circumstances, but I hope that they're watching from wherever they are. As we always do, before we kick off things, we're going to have a midweek highlight. Berna? I know there's a few highlights that you want to share with us tonight.
One is the flooding in Southern Africa.
Yes.
Which really brings to life the risks that scientists have talked about around climate change for a very long time, despite the politics, behind it. But we clearly continue to see a lot of evidence showing that if we don't do more to protect our environment, there are more risks. And also the capacity of our countries to respond. If you look at the response so far in most of these countries, it's really inadequate. We're ill-prepared.
Especially in Mozambique, for instance.
Yeah, and linked to that is rapid urbanization. Yeah, so you'll have so many people dying, so I don't know going forward how we can sort of try to mitigate risks around climate change, but it's a reality, and I think it would be good to see the African Union, African countries do more to support the southern region instead of waiting for aid from abroad, because if you look at the response so far, you have NGOs abroad taking the lead in response. We need to see African governments taking the lead and taking the responsibility.
For these natural disasters, yeah. Absolutely. So we're going to kick off the show. Unless, is there something you want to share with us, Stephen or Aline? Any highlights of the week that you'd like to share or not?
Well, I think on my side it's all about the Justice Week.
Yes.
This whole week is the Justice Week.
That's true.
And it was really something that shocked me, seeing how most of government institutions that have really invested much in this Justice Week, from the national level, the civil society organizations, seeing how this partnership of the civil society and government institutions, how they are working around justice sector, seeing how they go up country to solve some issues related to legal matters. Really, it was something that I saw as a homegrown solution, on how maybe to partner with civil society organizations, with maybe what I can call like the government institutions, in a way of not seeing them in a perspective of rivalry, like civil society and the government institutions. So it was something really that worked my mind very hard this week.
And is this the first Justice Week ever, or does it happen on an annual basis?
Well, it's supposed to be happening every year, But this year, it's how the image turned around. Seems it was in a different image, because I think last time civil society organizations were not very much involved in justice sector, but this year there is really visibility for civil society organizations in this Justice Week.
Aline, is there something you'd like to share with us? Or?
I think this has been combined with this month. Yeah, this is a month for women. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're going to go with the hot potato in the room, decriminalizing adultery. So I'll just read a bit of specifics, especially that you will. I'll start with you, Advocate Stephen, that you will shed more light on. So among the 5 articles that are currently being contested is the law on adultery and concubinage. Article 136, Article 136 states that adultery, its prosecution and punishment states that any spouse who has sexual intercourse with a person other than his or her spouse commits an offense. This offense risks a jail sentence of 6 months to 1 year. So, but then also on the other hand, we have local women's rights NGO, Profamt Kwese Hamge, and they believe that the articles criminalizing adultery and concubinage should remain so that families are protected in society.
Yeah.
I'll start with you, Stephen. Why do you think that this law should be decriminalized?
Thank you. First of all, in my opinion, or my point of understanding, sometimes when you're talking of criminal matters or criminal law, sometimes the way we interpret them, the way criminal laws are interpreted, that is the one perspective. They have to be in a strict manner. There is no analogy in interpreting criminal matters. That is one. Two, this is an issue that is cross-cutting, both in criminal matters and also in civil matters, because adultery is one of the grounds also that are being used in civil matters when it comes to divorce. So, and also seeing the way the article itself, the way it is structured, or the way it is drafted, vis-a-vis looking at it as who is the owner, who can initiate the case first. So that also seems it's one of the issues that having it in our criminal code or in our penal code, is it just an article, or is it something that really can be implemented fully by government institutions? Because one of something to be called an offense at first hand, it has to be something to do with the public order. And then when it comes to this article, if you go further and you read it, you'll find it's more of individual issues. It's no longer public order. So now it's like an individual issue, not public order. That's why sometimes they're even reserving some rights to the victims, the ones to sue, and even to withdraw their claims. So now you ask yourself, is it now defying public order, or it's individual issues? Now, if it's individual issue now, let it take it to civil matters, because that's where the torts and liabilities can be answered through civil matters. But then torts can't be brought into criminal matters. So that's my point of view. I think it has to belong to either
or
to civil matters or to criminal matters.
Just very quickly, for the purposes of the people who are watching us, what is the difference between civil matters and criminal matters?
Thank you, Dana. Criminal matters, these are when we say criminal matters, it's more especially offenses and their penalties. And when you talk of an offense, it is an act or an omission that can be done by someone breaching public order. Just call that word. It's just breaching public order. Meaning your act or your omission must have to do something with me and other many people, not only me. That is in the part when it comes to criminal matters.
Aline is already laughing.
Aline is already laughing.
But we'll get to this.
So when it comes now to to civil matters. These are torts and liabilities. It's like one-on-one issues.
Okay.
That's in a simple language. That's how I can call it. It's like me and you issues that can be related. So you can hear they're two different. One is private interest. Another one is public interest. Isn't it, Aline? Yeah.
So that's, in a nutshell, these are your views on why it's not in it. It's all over the place. It's civil, public, private. Civil, criminal, public, private. It's just not adequate that this adultery is criminalized. Yeah,
for me, one of the greatest points. If you hear the people that are always raising this issue to be in the criminal code or in our penal code, most of them are like saying that it's trying to protect the family. But then, if you see the way the article itself, the way it is drafted, and seeing where the responses can be got from, if now you reserve the victim the right, for example, to sue someone and to withdraw the claim, and it's done. So now you hear there is a principle whereby this article in criminal matters, when the people are drafting criminal matters, they have to be having the principle of certainty, the principle of legal certainty. You know, it has to be in that nature. So now if you lose that component, it has already lost like a big portion of it being in a criminal aspect.
Because that uncertainty, when the affected party decides to take back
when he decides to withdraw the case or to take it back,
yes,
then it has also another image.
No, it's like...
So Aline, yes, Stephen has spoken his piece, representing those, I think, who think that adultery should not be criminalized.
Yeah.
You're here on behalf of Profound Kwesehame. This is the third party that joined this particular petition. This year, it took place at the Supreme Court on Monday this week. So what is your stance on this?
Thank you, Diana. First of all, we are referring to the Constitution. The Constitution is the highest law that governing and protect all Rwandans. By putting article in the Constitution that protects family, and it's implicated that family means a lot to the government. And also, government has the responsibility of protecting its citizens. So by protecting citizens, especially on family, it has put law and institution to protect such family. So by protecting family, family is considered as natural foundation of the Rwandan society. So if we leave it without protection, if we leave it without protection, then how are we going to make sure that we have a society? If we leave everything there, it's free. You go there, you come back, then you go where? Yeah. Yes. And it has impact, especially on the children. For instance, if it's not criminal, then why is it regulated by the law? If marriage is like other contract, civil contract, then doesn't need to go to the civil notary and the registrar to take oath. So for us, we see marriage as not a simple contract. We see it as a covenant where you have a pledge and you have to fulfill.
And if you don't, there should be legal repercussions.
Yes.
To the affected parties.
Yes.
This is what you think.
Yes, and it has to be criminal, and for protecting such acts, it has to be the barrier or something to protect you, because we've been raising awareness, we've been educating community, but they go beyond the education and then commit what is not allowed to do. So it has something to prevent, because, you know, there are some people who cannot do something because there is a punishment. There are others who can just leave it, but because they are punishment, some people...
It acts as a deterrent.
Yes.
It prevents people from going ahead with them.
Yes.
Brenda, would you like to weigh in?
I mean, I'm looking at her and I totally don't get it. Well, perhaps because I'm not married.
Yes.
But I would like really to understand. How do you protect the family? Explain to me how this protects the family.
Yeah. Article 18 of the Rwandan Constitution, in its paragraph 2.
Don't quote the law.
Yeah, yes, yes.
How it keeps.
I'm trying to show how we are aligned with Constitution, and also we are thinking of the family. I've said if we leave everything is free, then nothing will be happen to the community, to the family. But by protecting family, it has to be grounds, it has to be environment. If we call it family, it means there is a source, and the source of family is marriage. So by protecting family, it has to be law, and that law has to be respected.
Okay, let me take it outside the law, because first of all, I don't see how you can probably regulate private matters. How are you? Okay, let's take it to before court. If I have a relationship with a married man, how are you going to prove that?
If you are in a relationship and that man is not married,
yes, how are you going to prove that?
This is your right. This is your right. We don't need to protect you. We are protecting you because you have entered in another status. Let me say so. Because if you are single, you have your rights. You have.
But what you say if she's adulterous, so to speak. So, but the way I read it in the law,
we say it,
you have to actually prove. There has to be the burden on proof. So if you will have to go and I don't know.
You have to prove. That's one.
How are you going to prove?
She keeps mentioning protecting the family.
Yes.
Protecting the family, and according to you, family is just about married people, right? I don't look like I have a family, right?
No,
because I'm not married. Yeah?
No.
But my understanding, Brenda, and I think I'd like to hear from you on something else when we move on, is that criminalizing adultery acts as a deterrence, so people actually don't do it in their relationships. No. That's not. This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm trying to understand. What Aline is saying on behalf of Profam, right? It acts as a deterrence because it's criminalized, so people. No, don't nod your head. I'm just trying to explain what I'm listening to. As a deterrence for people not to actually commit the act. And therefore, by not committing the act, they remain within those boundaries of family. So not being adulterous, you're protecting the notion of family as it is, the affected parties, and therefore the children. So acting as a deterrence, I think, is the main, this is what I'm hearing. Do you want to weigh in?
So now, you agree with it?
I don't agree with it.
Okay.
My job here, listen. My job here is to try and make sure everyone is understood. So
okay.
I'm really just trying to.
Well, there is what she just mentioned, saying that if she raises an issue like protecting the family, right? I don't think in all matters protecting the family has to be in criminal issues. Because there is always other mechanisms that you can protect the family. Because let's maybe go let's go to direct to the law. If you go to the law direct, maybe let's go to the law governing persons and family. It has a way that it has solved this issue. Because adultery is one of the grounds of divorce.
Yes.
And in that specific law, it doesn't say that you need to first pass through this criminal channel, you need to be convicted to have committed that crime. Some of them, they just sue the person saying, no, it was on a red-handed spot. Evidence. I don't need to go there. And they use it. That is a mechanism that I agree that can be used, to protect the family. That is one. But then, in all times, in all matters of the family, bringing this thing into the penal code, or putting it as an offense itself, it doesn't protect the family. Before I leave it to Aline to touch on it again. She was saying that in all these matters, they're protecting the family, they're protecting, sorry to say, the so-called marital status of the person, and also children that are also involved in the family. But also, let's go back to the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't tell us that in order for us to protect the family, all issues related to the family has to go into the penal code. No. That is the issue. And now, most of people, when you go to the law governing children, they say that in all matters, you need to see the interest of a child. Now, let's make it a quick, resolved issue. Someone is caught in adultery. Maybe you penalize him with maybe 1 year or 2 years, or he or she. Then you leave one spouse looking after the kids. Now, from that point of view, from that decision took by the court, are you protecting these children? Because now it's like you're creating another issue that might rise in other years to come. Because we have seen it. We have seen whereby children are saying, no, Mom, we are not right with what you did. Our father is not supposed to be there. Our mother is not supposed to be there. Now, you see,
it's interesting that you said you've created another issue.
You have created another issue. Within another issue.
Now, and this actually, we're going to read our tweets later on. This corresponds to some of the tweets where the tweets to Alina. Can she explain? Can she explain about the Penal Code of 1977 and how it protects families, especially when one of the spouses goes to prison? Yes, Aline.
That Penal Code also has its own issue because it doesn't consider adultery as at the same level. If adultery is committed by a man, then the penalties was not the same. So this has...
Wait. What do you mean? If adultery is committed by a man?
For men, the imprisonment was 6 months.
Was 6 months?
Yes. Then for women, it was one year.
Wait, I don't get it.
Wait.
So no. Let's just get this straight, and please. So if a woman commits adultery, she gets 1 year.
Yes.
If a man commits adultery, he gets 6 months.
Gets 6 months.
Why?
So now what's
the rationale?
What's the rationale?
The rationale, it was the drafting of that time. It was really...
you're talking about the Penal Code in the past.
In the
one
past.
that was established in 1977.
In 1977.
Until for the last 4 decades.
It was the one that there wasn't the principle of equality before the law.
Yes.
It wasn't really there. And even though it was in the Constitution, but it wasn't in that specific law, it wasn't there because it was, it was like putting one up and putting one down. It was as if a man, if you commit adultery, it's okay, we can understand. But a woman, it's really something strange. So that was, I think, the point we made.
The rationale, maybe. But let's come back and let's note that adultery is a result. It's a result of not honoring what you've committed to do. Because we cannot say adultery when you are single, when you are not entered into a contract of marriage.
Of course, adultery is obviously between married couples.
Then, if you feel you're not going to fulfill what is marriage requires you to do, just leave it and stay there. Yes. Yes.
I want to ask you a question, Aline.
But because when you are married, you decide to have a children or not, but you have to, because it says if you are going to get married, you have to follow what is provided under Rwandan law. So under Rwandan law, we are not allowed to commit adultery. So if you
you need permission.
No, you don't need permission, but because it's
criminalized.
Yes, and there are some responsibility you get because of the status. If you're not married, you can, we can, no, and no one can say you commit a crime of adultery. Then, by protecting the family, I'm coming back to my point. By protecting family, Constitution states well that it will put relevant law organs that will protect family. By protecting family, it put the law. Because also the legislators knows that there are a lot of ways of deterrent criminal, but if you go beyond that, you have to be punished. By punishing you, then you are in jail. Maybe you come back, changing your mind, or you will realize that it was not.
Let's hear from Verna. But we've gotten your point.
I honestly don't get it, because you keep talking about protecting the family, and the law, and so far I haven't had anything that protects the family. You know how it protects the family. If anything, it makes life more difficult for the family, because you are defining the family based on the man and the husband. You know, the man and the woman. We have children. We have, we have to think about the family beyond the man and the woman. Yes? Now, I want to understand how you as Profam came to this position. And the reason I'm asking this is because if you look at the rates of divorce and causes, do you have proof that adultery is a leading factor? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Could you expound on that research?
Yes. First of all, Profam, we are operating at the community level. We work with women whom are most vulnerable of that crime. I said most because there are also men who are vulnerable. But by protecting family, by having such evidence conversations with the grassroots citizen, you could say, as I said earlier, there are some who could not commit such act because there is a punishment. But if everything is free, then everyone will go and do what they want. And also, when we talk about criminalizing, the mindset is it is still challenging, because if someone knows that I'm going to do this, nothing will happen to me.
Please allow me to interrupt, yeah?
But
going back to the issue of research, I want to understand your research, yeah? I'm resisting the temptation of asking the research objective.
So far we don't
but let's
have,
go,
just make you
don't have the research, right?
So far we don't have yet statistic to say over this.
So then you're misleading us.
No.
You are not. Because if you don't have evidence to support your position, I'm afraid you're misleading us.
No.
But very quickly, I want to, before we go to the next part of the, because I feel like you and her are going back. You don't understand, but she tries to clarify. You don't understand, she tries to But I think this is something that we'll delve into. My question to you is, what are the implications? I know at the Supreme Court, let me finish.
Yeah.
At the Supreme Court, some of the things that was stated by Profam was that there's actually evidence-based, research that adultery is causal. There's a causal effect between that and gender-based violence. Can you expound more on that?
Yeah, most of the cases we receive, and our member organization, because Profam is an umbrella of organization, if there is an adultery, then after this, it's a divorce. Because in our culture, being divorced, it's a taboo. Yeah, saying I'm divorced, it's a taboo. But getting at that point, deciding to divorce, it's like something goes beyond expectations. So evidence we have is that we receive many clients that come we need a psychological counseling. We need advice how we can do this and this. Then you end up getting, we finally get divorced because we couldn't continue in such way. And this happened because of adultery.
Okay,
I just want to come back to the point that Stephen has raised, that adultery or a crime is against public order, and I do agree. But when we are saying adultery, it doesn't have only effect on the family, nuclear family. It has also effect on extended family, which form the public. Yes, by hearing that your uncle or your aunties or whoever knows you, that you are in that, yes, this is the reality, yeah, that you are in a procedure of getting divorced. So it comes another issue. Everyone gets hurt, coming to you, calling to you. So it has effect beyond the family, which goes to the public.
Yeah.
So
Ali,
that's why
please.
it has to be
criminal. I think let's move on. But before we go into, I wanted to discuss marriage as a civil, as a contract. And this is something that is basically, you know, there's this opinion in the public sphere that marriage as civil contracts registered by the state and therefore should be protected for public interests. Criminalizing adultery is therefore seen as protection of the family institution and protection of the parties involved in the marriage. But just like you mentioned, this is a civil matter that we are putting as a criminal matter. But at the same time, the idea is, from most people in the public, is that, you know, the sanctity of marriage, it's something that is legal. So there should be legal repercussions when this contract is broken. What's your take on that, Stephen?
Thank you, Diana. But there is this thing people need to understand sometimes. You know, let's go, if you go direct to the penal code or to criminal matters, in most of times, you'll find one thing. They will say breaching of public order. If you go to even dictionaries, if you just say public order, it has its own meaning.
Yeah, specific.
Right, it has its specific meaning of what a public order is. You understand? Now, let's take it back to where sometimes some laws, even I can't fear to say that even some national laws are drafted on customary norms. You understand? Saying that, you know, our culture, it behaves like this, so we need to protect our culture like this.
Yes.
That's a very big mistake. On my point of view, that's a very big mistake, because you can't criminalize something basing on norms.
And,
you know, go to international standards. International standards of criminal law. You can't say that you're criminalizing something depending on norms. This is how we understand. This is how our society. Of course, I agree that some laws are there to protect the society. But now let's go to the society. The one that these people, everyone is trying to mean that this is the logic behind it. It is putting us in the point of now bringing in the principle of analogy, explaining criminal matters in an analogy way. And if you go to direct to our penal code, go to Article 4 of our penal code.
Yes.
Itself, it sets the principle. Now, if the same law sets the principle, and now there is another article that defies the principle set in the previous article, now, let's try to see now how these things work. That's why sometimes in criminal matters, if you go to the same Article 4, it is even one of the grounds, if maybe the judge decides in criminal matters in an analogy way, it is one of the grounds you can appeal for that case. Now, let's go back to this specific thing. You're saying it is public order. We have seen that in criminal matters, the victim to offenses, even though you withdraw your claim, still the prosecution
Goes on.
goes on with the
Absolutely.
with the case. But now this one, it's like it has like an exception. You know, it drafted like nature, whereby they're saying no. Now at this point, if the victim now withdraws the claim, you see, now even
At which level?
they say that at any level, but they still go to a second paragraph. They say that if the case has already reached in court, you can't withdraw it. You see, they're also
And
putting
basically-
limitations.
But basically, we need to read our tweets. On this debate, what I am understanding is that from your legal perspective, is that there are just too many loopholes in this particular article being part of the penal code. There's ambiguity, there's, what do you call it? There are loopholes in the fact that it's there,
There is loopholes also.
as well as contradictions.
Even contradictions are there. But also, there is another principle that this law is trying to bring into life, which I can call like the principle of revenge.
Interesting.
You see, it's like some people are bringing in another new component, another new legal principle, which is not written. The principle of revenge. Because if you go to some of these cases, if maybe a man is caught,
Yes.
now the lady says, hey, first go there for 2 weeks. You see? First go there for 2 weeks.
They're being jailed.
Be jailed for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, you on the floor. You know, you will understand. You see? It's like now a new thing. Now, if you pronounce a statement like that one, at the end of the day, you withdraw your claim. Now, let's come back to the other protection of the other family we're saying. Really, that thing, is it going to survive again?
Stephen, do
Very-
you
very
agree?
quickly. Bernard,
Do you
very
agree with
quickly
me
before
that,
we go to our social media?
Just, no, I just want to take it out of the law and the court, and let us have a discussion based on the reality of what's happening, you know, in our homes and families. Yeah, we know that there are many laws restricting all sorts of behavior. You know, let's talk about alcohol. You know, whether it's age, at what point you have to drink alcohol. There are so many laws, and so far it hasn't stopped people. So, in my view, the issue of the law is not really the problem. But the fundamental issue, I think, is how do we arrive at divorce? Adultery in the first case. There are underlying issues that eventually will cause one of the partners to go out. This is why I feel we should focus. If you're advocating for better families, we should, sort of look at the fundamental issues that the family needs to stay together. Let's not look at the symptoms.
Yes. Let's quickly go to our social media feed, because we have a couple of tweets that I really want us to read. So our first tweet for today is from Muramira, who says that, and I assume M is for mayor. I'm not sure.
It's for lawyers.
For lawyers, yeah. Sorry. Maître, in French, lawyers. I'm sorry. So he says that good law must be easy to enforce. However, according to Article 136 of the law determining offences and penalties in general, really its aim is not the best interest of well-being of the family. He echoes what you've been saying, Stephen. These matters will be resolved in accordance with civil laws in Rwanda. Before we go to our next tweet, this is
yeah. That's exactly what we were saying. When you say that well-being of the family, if you go to the well-being of the family, how are you going to convince me at first hand how the family is going to be aware of if one of the spouses is in jail?
Okay. We've exhausted this.
They are in jail because he commits what he's not supposed to do. Because, as I said,
but are you aware, and I'm surprised you're saying this, are you aware that we have many women, for instance, because you're trying to protect women in this case, who depend on the husbands?
We are protecting families.
Yes,
and
but
when you say
being
family,
a women's organization,
so if he's
the
in jail
focus,
and the family is dependent on the adulterer, the protection of the family goes out the window. We've been circling. Sorry, let's go to our next tweet. We've been circling this issue. The next tweet is from Alex Rukundo Mercy, who says that adultery should not be a crime. It can be a ground for a civil offense or a ground for divorce. We all know that it is done voluntarily voluntarily. But again, people should not think that decriminalizing adultery is licensing adultery, and it is not morally right. We are going to go to our next tweet, but Aline, I know you have something to say, so just very quickly before we go to our next tweet. Is there something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just want to, let's not take marriage as other civil matters.
But it's a civil matter.
It's
a civil contract.
Because it's a contract.
Under civil law.
It is a contract.
Yes.
But if you are going to lease your car or your land, do you need taking oath? Do you?
There's a tweet to you on behalf of Prof Farm, and this tweet says, what happens when the adulterer in the couple is the woman? Does Prof Farm Kwesihame still recommend jail? Or their position is reserved for male adulterers? Protection of the family, yes, but family is not only a man or woman. We have to go beyond that.
Thank you. Respond to that.
Interesting.
Yes.
We are not saying families only women. Please, this is a mindset we have. If everyone had about Profam, thinks about women, yes, we are defending women's rights, but family on top. And when we are saying family, it's both men and women.
Okay.
Then we are recommending that it is a criminal issue because, as I said, marriage is not like other contracts. Because no other contract you're going to agree with me and Steven and take oath. Especially we take oath on the flag. But which show the magnitude, which show the importance of that thing you are doing.
I think the way I see it is that there's a legal perspective, there are legal instruments that have to be respected. And also, at the same time, what Profam I think is pushing forward is the protection of family.
Yes.
But unfortunately, within the legal framework, this cannot be absorbed into the current legal framework as it is because of the contradictions.
Let's look for other mechanisms
as well as the loopholes. Let's go quickly to another.
Maybe before that, let's look.
No, let's go to a tweet. Sorry, because it's important that we hear from the public. We have this is from Richard Guadira, who says that, can the state monitor a relationship between adults that is too complex, sensitive, and the individual for it to be capable of doing it in a just manner? Yeah. Our other tweet coming up is also from, if I'm not mistaken, I think we have something from Olive, who says that Olive questions the motive behind some men who are pushing for decriminalization of adultery. That's interesting. Brenna, what do you think of that tweet?
Oh, men.
But men are pushing for...
She's pushing for... She's questioning men
Why?
who are decriminalizing it.
Who are pushing?
Who are pushing for it. Why?
I don't want to think about whoever is pushing for it or not. For me, I feel the whole discussion has to focus on the fundamental issues that, you know, that keep families together.
Yes.
You know,
we have
let's not look at the symptoms.
Yeah, and Kunde says that, and Aline, this is to you before we close the show. He says, can Aline explain how the criminalization of adultery, concubinage, and family dissertation from the 1977, I think, law has protected the Rwandan family? How can you protect the family when one of the spouses is in prison? Will the children's rights be protected when one of the parents is in prison? So, Aline, just very clearly, because this is what keeps on coming up. What is Profam stance?
Much of femicide and the other death you are hearing about, the rationale is adultery. Adultery has contribution a lot in those femicide you are hearing everywhere.
What do you mean by femicide?
Killing of women.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get you.
And also because man think that woman has committed adultery, then the decision is killing.
But why? Why are women or men committing adultery? I think that's where the issue is.
This is another issue.
Why?
This is another issue.
Why?
Maybe,
based on your research, why?
Maybe...
Not maybe. You've done research. Why?
But you said earlier on, the research, I don't think the specific statistics are there. This is something we'll come to later. Stephen, very quickly before we get to the last part.
The very quick thing I can say.
Very quickly. Yes.
First of all, people should understand one thing. When it comes to you to decide who to have your sexual relationship with, itself, it's a human right. It's a right. So now, are we really taking away people's rights? I think the nature of a law like that one, whereby, that's a simple example I'm giving, because in most of international instruments, that's something there, right? That's something there.
Yes.
Really, and I don't think today we are in a place whereby we can now take out the right, because most of the international instruments, this has been considered as a right, choice to decide.
The more you talk legally, there are just so many loopholes around this. I want us to go to the sorry, we're running out of time, so we have to move quickly. 1 second, Ellie. We're running out of time. I want us to focus now on the other aspects about this whole criminalization or decriminalization of adultery. From a legal perspective, what other alternative measures are there? The petitioners of this particular article in the Penal Code, Richard Mugisha and team, do you know if they're offering any alternative measures to the Supreme Court for this case? Or if not, are there alternative measures we can discuss other than punitive measures and considering adultery as an offense that deserves jail time or fines? Or are there sort of alternative measures? I'm just saying this is something we can brainstorm on here, just very briefly.
Well, I think on my point of view, and according to how I've had their petition,
yes.
For them they're saying that let's leave this to civil matters, because it has been resolved in a civil way, whereby it has gave even alternatives. These specific laws, because there is the difference between because the family itself has a specific law, which is the law regulating family and persons. That is a specific law on persons and family. So now, if it is there, why can't people be using that alternative? Because it is there to unite, to reunite the family. Because if this issue happens, you can still have a room to discuss about it. There is a way you can still resolve it as a family, because in this new family law, they have brought in the concept of the extended family. So if this issue happens, you can still discuss about it in the family. I think that is the best alternative someone can go, rather than going into the penal code.
Alain, my question for you, do you, pro-farm or you, other than throwing adulterers in jail, do you have a sort of alternative measure? For instance, if this doesn't win in court, right, this particular petition to make it remain in the penal code, are you thinking as a women's rights organization of alternative measures that don't include considering adultery as a criminal offense?
Yeah, it's a criminal offense.
Yeah, but do you have alternative measures? Let's say,
if it's a criminal, there is another alternative. You can, unless it is provided by the law. But what is provided so far, it's jail. There is no even there
are no fines.
There are no fines, which shows also how adultery is very crucial and have impact on the family.
But would you consider? But would you consider an alternative? As pro-farm, as a link here on behalf of pro-farm.
Maybe if we suggest an alternative, really, can you buy the idea?
Oh.
It's hard, eh?
You don't have to answer that today.
You don't have to answer that today.
But I just want to come back on the point just Stephen mentioned, deciding having sex.
That's a right.
Yeah, it's a right, and we are not questioning that. It's a right. But if you have decided to marry, you have, yes, there is an obligation comes from that contract or from that agreement you are entered in. So if you go beyond, because no one forces you to marry, if you want to go there and there, just, yes. And if marriage is there, it has
Respect the Constitution.
Yes.
Bernard and Stephen, we're coming to the end of the show. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of the show. I would like you
Just
to...
give me a few seconds.
No.
Please, Diana. Just a few seconds.
1 second, 1 second. I will. I would like us to give our closing statements. When I say closing statements, in conclusion, you're present here. Thank you for honoring us with your presence. But can you give closing statements on this issue? And I'll start with you, Stephen, because I know you have a lot to say. But in the interest of time, please keep it brief.
I'm going to keep it brief.
Yes.
One of the things, the reason why I say that this issue has to be decriminalized, one of the principles, we follow the international standards. And our country is not outside of the legal environment in the whole world. If you see, most of this adultery, in 1970s, it was a crime in most of the European countries. But it ended in 2006 with Russia.
Actually, India also decriminalized adultery.
Decriminalized it.
Why? Because there was inequality. It also punishes women than
Now,
men.
it
Yes.
shows, I think it's, do I still have the closing
No.
statement? Okay.
You've used it
Still,
yes.
you see, now, if other countries,
Yes.
if they find it as a principle of honoring a
What do you
choice
mean
of
in other
someone,
countries?
Yes.
if you're in that environment of human rights protectors, if we say in the whole world, now we don't have to be exceptions in order for us to rely on that. But still, what I agree, we can still look for other alternatives rather than looking for the solution in penalties like jailing someone. Maybe they can have looked for other alternatives, even though I don't buy them. This thing has to be resolved in civil relationships, because even though the way they say it, even though they're putting it exception because there is a certain activities you do, you go on the flag, they put it a contract different, but it's not different. So let's put it back to the civil matters. Let's resolve it there. That's what I think.
Brenda, very quickly. First of all, what is your stance on the matter? Other than interrogating Profam, what is your stance on the matter? But very quickly.
One, I believe that everything has to be done to protect the family.
Yes.
But you have to look at the fundamental issues. Let us not focus on the symptoms. We have to investigate how people eventually become adulterous. I think Profam could do us a favor by focusing on addressing the underlying issues within the family that cause it to disintegrate, and eventually, in the first place.
Aline?
Sex, good luck if you think you can, good luck with that.
Aline, briefly, your closing statements.
Yeah. I just want to come back on the...
No, you can't go back. Your closing statements, please. We are left with less than a minute.
My
Your
closing statement,
statements.
let's keep the momentum of respecting what is law provides for. If we are not forced to do something and you enter with your commitment, let's respect what is written in the laws. So don't go there and there because you are not allowed. Secondly, I would like to tell the community that marriage is not like other contracts. Yeah, because by getting into marriage, there is another responsibility and obligation, and that needs to be fulfilled. So let's keep the momentum of not getting into adultery. Yeah.
I think personally for me, having listened to you all and moderated very feisty arguments, yes, I think it needs to be reviewed. The ambiguity of this, but this being a criminal offense and it falls under sort of civil matter, these are things that need to be ironed out. Otherwise, I think it will be very problematic moving forward. Please keep the conversation going using our hashtag #TheSquareRW on Twitter. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much to our guests, Aline from Profam and Profam Tkesehame and Stephen. Thank you very much for joining us and shedding light on this issue. I know the court ruling is set for April 24th. On this matter, we'll be very eagerly anticipating the verdict, so to speak. Thank you for tuning in. I'd like to thank our partners, Uzi Collections, as well as Bourbon Coffee, for always partnering with the Square. Thank you very much, and see you again same time next week. Have a good night.